Somehow I told you so just doesn't quite say it. You know,
Hello, Garland Nixon here. And, I think a lot of us saw this coming, and which was putting it in the context of a disintegrating empire, putting it in the context of a politically unstable environment, and instead of in the context of a person, Trump. One of the things that is very difficult to do, and that I have been trying to do ever since the day um, we started to getting into politics, was to preach systems and not people, right? Not Trump, not Biden, not Obama. Let's call it Donald J, Obama, Biden, Bush, Trump, and Yahoo, right? That this is what you get. Perhaps I remember a while back when there was a bunch of Native Americans somewhere. I forgot where they were, but they didn't want some pipeline. The Democrats were in. It was under Obama. And they were protesting, and people were like, "Oh, Obama's a lefty, progressive guy. He'll be there." They sprayed him with hoses. They did everything but mowed him down with shotguns, right? Okay. Then let's not forget what happened during the protests against genocide at Columbia University. Under who was that again? Joe Biden. They dragged the students out. They beat them. They arrested students. They arrested the teachers, instructors. They called them anti-Semites, even though a lot of them were Jewish. The protests that were led by Jews were anti-Semitic. It was just a disaster under Biden. There was a genocide going on. It continued. And let me add this, and as also a part of this conversation, you have to take this into account, that the other part of I told you so was that the war on terror, that what goes on abroad will come home, right? That when they're going around, slaughtering people, beating people, breaking into houses in Erbil and Mosul and Fallujah and doing all of these things, that the time will come when the war on terror will come home, and they'll say we're either January 6th lunatics, or we're there's always some reason that we're domestic terrorists, we're threatening the police over immigration, there's whatever, there's always a reason for, if you're a Democrat, for you to say, oh, Ashley Babbitt got shot, well, she was a domestic terrorist January 6th something or other, so she had it coming. Oh, wait a minute, this guy, these people are getting shot in Minnesota, oh, they're Democrat, illegal immigrant threatening the police. There's always a reason, sadly, for working class people to fight amongst each other and to come up with a reason why it was good for the government to shoot somebody because they weren't a member of my team, of my clique, of my tribe, right? My group. So it was okay. Oh, there was a black guy. Well, he probably, they'd shoot like some black guys like standing on his corner talking on his phone. His phone was a shiny object. I remember this guy. He was like, wasn't quite, you might remember this guy. He wasn't quite right. He was played like a violin. He was real skinny, black guy. And the cops grabbed him for no reason. He wasn't violating any law, and just strangled him, and just strangled the guy to death. And nothing happened to him. And people were like, well, yeah, but he theoretically could present a threat. And I'm like, bad news, white folks. Bad news, white people and then Latinos and everybody else. At some point, the government, they get happy. It's going to crack down, and it's coming. It's just, it never stops. How about this? In Ukraine, right? Zelensky comes to power. And what did they do in Ukraine? They took all of the radio and TV stations, and they just like shut anyone down that spoke in Russian, and then they brought them all together to one. Right, there was like 6 major TV stations in Ukraine, and they took over all. The government took over all of them and made them one. And now all that station does is just puts out propaganda 24 hours a day. They did the same with the TV, with the news, papers, everything. In fact, if you recall, when Trump first came in and there was talks about taking money away from the National Endowment for Democracy and all of that, we found out that 90% of all of the news outlets in Ukraine were funded by the National Endowment for Democracy, or whatever the U.S. government was. So that's what they did in Ukraine. Well, what's happening with CBS and Paramount and all that, Larry Ellison and all of these Zionist organizations? Or what are they doing? They're turning all of the news outlets, they're turning all of the media outlets into one. They're doing exactly what they did in Ukraine. The news outlets, they're doing it here. Exactly what they did during the war on terror all over the Middle East, they're doing it here. All of these things that you can find a reason to justify the government doing it, because they shot Ashley Babbitt and she was January 6th. So they shot this person and you're an illegal immigrant. All of that, you always got a reason for the government. But people like me and a lot of us sit down and exactly what somebody said, wake up, people. This is not about January 6th. This is not about illegal immigration. I keep saying it over and over. If they wanted to get the illegal immigrants, they'd go to the meat packing houses. Why aren't they going to the meat packing houses? Wonder why they're not going to the meat packing houses. Oh, wait a minute, they're owned by billionaires. Why are they not going to Tyson chicken farms and Tyson's houses? Why are they not going to Mount Air? Why not going to Tyson food? Why are they not going? That was the person, Elijah McClain. Why is it an autistic guy who just, they grabbed him and choked him out? He did nothing wrong, violated no law, wasn't even accused of violating a law. And people were like, well, the police felt threatened by an autistic kid who was not violating the law in any way. Right? It was just as the government. See, some people look at it like this: the police, ICE, Homeland Security, or whatever. I look at it like this: government overreach, government oppression. You have these people who claim to be anti-government. Yes, I'm afraid of the government. I'm anti-government. But then they believe the lies of the government. When the government says, we're there to stop illegal immigration, they're in the chat saying, well, Garland, you don't understand. They have to do something about illegal immigration. I'm like, isn't it interesting that they can't do anything about illegal immigration at the meat packing houses that are loaded with illegal immigrants? Isn't it interesting that they can't do anything about illegal immigration at the big, huge hotels, Ritz-Carlton? And for some reason, they can't do anything about it there. The place where the billionaires make money. Isn't it interesting? They can't go down to Potomac here, where all the billionaires live, on River Road in Maryland, and they can't say, oh, you know what? Perhaps we need to check these people's houses, because the people who are watching their kids, cutting their grass, cleaning their house are all undocumented immigrants. Isn't it interesting how they can't inconvenience the billionaires in any way or cost them money in any way by cracking down on illegal immigration in places where they need it? Never. No. They can go to Minnesota, to Detroit, wherever the hell, where they can make a political point. Now, let me add this. Fast food. Exactly. Oh, they ain't gonna touch any of that stuff, because this is not about illegal immigration. This is a show trial. It's just show crap for you, so that the red cult can say Trump's standing up for us. He has backtracked. He has did the same damn thing as Biden. He's done a 180. Everything he said he was going to do was a lie, exactly like Joe Biden. But yet you still have these brainwashed zombies who think somehow either the Democrats or the Republicans are going to come in and bail them out. Let me ask you this. They're sailing ships towards Iran. What the hell do you think is going to happen if some gigantic war happens? We might be in World War III. We could all get nuked. Do you hear, dear lovers of the Democrats saying, don't do that. That could be catastrophic. No, because the Zionists want it to happen, and the Zionists own the Democrats. How about the Republicans? You see them like, hey, man, we need a little bit of peace. How about this America First stuff that we promised, how about we do some of that? Ain't happening. The Democrats and the Republicans are there for you to do this. Here's the Democrats, here's the Republicans. Oh, you'll notice the same person owns both of these heads. There you go. Fight it out, you poor suckers. Now, let's talk about this latest shooting. Again, Those of you who know I was in law enforcement. I'm sure you all know. And then I taught all this stuff and on and on and on. And that I was recognized nationally for my work on police accountability, right? So let's talk about this. Let me just give you the logic test. Let's just do the logic test. Here's what we are to believe happened if we are to support the government's position, not the police officers, the government. I would say the government, and it is very, very rare for me to support the government's position. In fact, almost non-existent. So let's go. Okay, this man was armed legally, right? Legally armed. He approached some police officers. They were apparently accosting a woman for whatever reason. We can argue whether it's legal or not legal, whatever the case may be. I don't know. I didn't see the video. Here's what I know. They were wrestling with some woman, as these guys tend to seem to do a lot. Always wrestling with protesters, right? So apparently this guy approached them. Apparently at some point he must have attempted to help pick the woman up. Okay. He was on the ground. There was half a dozen or so ICE officers. I saw arms flying. I saw struggling going on, right? Now, according to their story, this is what we have to believe. And this is the problem I have with this. Logical, let's run this through the logical test. He was on the ground. He was struggling with apparently being beaten by, accosted, wrestled by 6-8 cops. Now, we didn't see him approach the officers and pull his gun and start firing. We didn't see him do anything and pull his gun and threaten the officers. However, according to the officer's story, several officers were on the ground. We got to believe this. And this guy was down there and there was officers accosting this guy, according to them, attempting to arrest him, subdue him, whatever. I'm supposed to believe that a man who's laying on the ground, who has 6 or 8 officers around him, who is like sprayed with pepper spray, made a decision. I know, I'll pull my gun out, I'll point it to the officers, and I'll start firing. Now, we all know that if you're laying on the ground and cops are all over, and if you put your hand on your gun, if reach for the gun and pull the gun on, there was something that's an old term, death by cop, right? And what that meant was somebody would take out a gun and point it at the cops and just basically go ahead and shoot me, suicide by cop, right? They point a gun at a cop. People, it has happened where people have pointed a gun at the cops just to get the cops to shoot them because they wanted to commit suicide. Okay, that has happened. That's what we have to believe. We have to believe that a man, knowing that if he touched, reached, pulled out his gun in any way, shape, or form, that 5 or 6 cops were going to immediately fire at him and riddle him with bullets. And we're supposed to believe that this guy thought, I know, I'll pull my gun out and start firing at the cops. It doesn't pass the logic test. It would have to be suicide by cop. It would have to be the only possible argument, which doesn't make sense, would be that he was ready to die and he decided, I'll reach for my gun because I know then the cops are going to fill me full of holes, and so I'm going to do that. That's what we would have to believe. And I don't believe it for 1 second. Here's what we have. We have 2 instances. The first instance, there was a woman who a policeman stepped in front of her car, ICE officer. There were 2 officers. One of the officers, at some point, she was trying to drive away. He pulled his weapon. He shot at her. He hit her more than once, twice. I don't know. He shot her in the head. But she mashed on the gas. Her wheels were turned to the right. And how do we know that? Because when she mashed on the gas, her vehicle lunged to the right. So they had to be turned to the right. We could see that they were turned to the right, away from the officer. And when she mashed on the gas, in fact, the vehicle went away from the officer. So clearly, if she was trying to run the officer, they would have been turned to the left because the officer was on the left. And when she mashed on the gas, the vehicle would have went towards the officer. Kinetics don't lie. Physics don't lie. What happened? She's there. The officer's on the left. She mashes on the gas. The car lunges to the right. Well, the wheels were obviously turned to the right. So then the officer shoots her, fires multiple times, and then says, I thought she was going to run me over. Now then what happens? The political, not legal comments are made by Donald Trump and other people, many of which were just untrue. Yes, the officer was dragged by the car. He literally said the officer was dragged by the vehicle and is in the hospital. Well, he wasn't dragged by the vehicle. He wasn't run over. He wasn't struck by the vehicle at all. He walked away. Right after the video, you see him walking, do. Then Trump, oh, he's in terrible shape. The man's dragged by the vehicle. He's got one foot in the grave and the other on a patch of ice. She tried to kill him, except the fact that it was all true. I mean, false. Except that it was false. He might as well said she pulled out an Uzi and sprayed the man. He was hit 45 times. She might as well. Doesn't matter. So my point is, the comments, so an ICE officer shoots someone, and the comments that are made by Trump or whoever, these people, everybody who supports them, the people on Twitter, the bots, everybody that supports them, these are not legal comments about whether or not the officer was at fault. These are political comments. How do I know? Let me explain it to you from a person who did this and taught this. Okay. A person who had one of my officers shoot and kill somebody when I was a major. So trust me, I know this. Okay. When the shooting happens, you have certain procedures that you have to have. Right? You'll have procedures in your manual. Shot, you do certain things. We also had procedures when it came to what we would or wouldn't say, right? You have procedures. So an officer shoots someone. What was my duty when the officer shot someone? The press comes up, Major Nixon, your officer shot so-and-so. What is my duty to say? My duty is to say, at this point, there's an investigation going on. We don't have information on the exact details at this point. I will update you at the end. I'm not supposed to say the officer was right. He was dragged by the car. Even if that's true, and I know it's true, excuse me, even I suspect that. I don't know it's true because the investigation has not concluded. I need an investigation to conclude whether you believe the police investigation is a whole nother story. But my point being is, how, as a person who's in charge of this stuff, how am I supposed to say the officer was right, the officer was wrong, when the investigation in many instances either hasn't started or just started, and there's no conclusive end to the investigation? So my point is, an officer shoots somebody. We saw what happened, but the point being, whether it's Trump or Vance or Kristi Noem or whoever, they're not supposed to come out and make a determination as though the investigation has been concluded and they know these things beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. They didn't. Had they talked to the investigators? And had the investigators done everything? No. Now, again, as I said, we already have our suspicions as to what's what. But my point being, the fact that an ICE officer shoots someone and his superiors say, oh, yeah, he was right. Oh, yeah, they were attacking him. They were this or that. Well, show me the investigation. Oh, that's right. It hasn't concluded. It's barely even started. The comments that were made in support of these officers who shot people were not legal comments based on empirical observations and based on an investigation. They were political comments that simply said, if an ICE officer, the ICE officer works for me. So if an ICE officer shoots someone, I'm going to support the ICE officer. That's what they were. They were statements of support, notwithstanding any evidence or any investigation that arose from the shooting. Because they were just like, here's the evidence. They said things that were clearly and patently false, that were provably false. So the fact that you said something that was provably, first of all, the fact that the investigation is supposed to be ongoing, and you make a determination how it's going to conclude the outcome of the investigation when it's barely started, well, that's pretty much evidence that it's a political statement. But at any rate, so here we are. What we're looking at is a certain level of tribalism, a certain level of people who say, no matter what, I support the cops. When the cops shoot somebody, I'm always going to support them. No, I know people, we all know people like that. They don't even have to know anything about the case. All they got to know is a cop shot somebody, and their political inclination is to support the cops. We all know people who's, if there's 100 shootings in a row, their political inclination 100 times in a row is to support the person. Mine ain't. In fact, I can tell you of instances. I remember two officers for I was a police officer, and there was a shooting, and a man who was a driver of a car was shot and killed. And two officers from the agency kind of looked at me, kind of with their head down, and they were like, yeah, everybody knows that was a bad shoot. These were two officers saying to me, everybody knows he should have shot that guy. Everybody meaning all of the officers on that police department knew good and well that a police officer had shot a citizen who presented no threat to him whatsoever, and that the investigation that said it was a good shoot was wrong and false. Well, that means that the internal investigators also knew that, if it was that obvious. And I remember thinking to myself, well, that really sucks. Because an innocent man who presented no threat to an officer was killed by a police officer. And all of the officers on the agency knows that exactly what happened. And none of them will stand up and say that's what happened. Can stand up. They may get shot themselves if they did. And what about the family? And what about the guy? So here's my point. For everybody out there who says, I reflexively support the cops. Reflexively, when a policeman shoots somebody, I politically, reflexively, reactively support the officers. Oftentimes, the officers ain't even supporting the officers. Oftentimes, the officers are hanging their heads saying, yeah, we know that was a bad shot. But they also know that the agency is going to support him no matter what and keep the officer from getting in trouble. That's the reality of the game. So I continue. The other irony here is that all of these conservatives could see that Ashley Babbitt was, quote, a bad shoot. We saw it. Ashley Babbitt, you saw the video. She was not, they were trying to get through a door or something, but the door was locked. And she was not a person who could get through the door. The officers just elected to shoot her for whatever reason, but she clearly was presenting no threat to those officers on the January 6th. Now, if you're a Democrat, you got to be, well, it's January 6th, so she should have been executed, I guess. I don't know. That's the Democrats. That's their position. And now, if you're a Republican, you got to be, he's an ICE agent. They're standing up against illegal immigration. These are political positions. They're not positions based on the facts. You already knew when Ashley Babbitt was shot before anything else happened. I knew there was no point in me talking to any Democrats. I knew it. Well, I knew it. I knew that I was going to be like, yeah, that was a bad shoot. I'm a police officer. She presented no. I was a police officer. Yeah, I trained in the academies. I'm telling you, she presented no threat to those officers. They had no right to shoot her. Right? I knew that, but I knew it was going to be like, yeah, well, those conservatives, January something or other 6. So ha ha ha, she got it. But now I know there'll be a bunch of conservatives, but Garland, something illegal immigration. So, hey, we got to take a political position. We must support the blue. And they blue ain't blue anymore because they're green, because they're all dressed in camo, because they all look like they just came from the 101st Airborne, which should be a signal to you. Many of them did. So here we are. We're in a situation where the instability at the highest level of politics, which, let's face it, if you look up and Joe Biden, addled, demented brain, is the puppet who we're supposed to believe is the president, you should start to figure something has gone awry. Something's gone really bad. And in comes Trump. And Trump says all the right things. And within weeks, he does a 180. You should think to yourself, man, Biden was a lying guy with dementia. And they brought in a guy who's a lying guy who seems to have dementia. I think I've noticed a pattern here. Perhaps the government's going bad. Perhaps things are going real bad. I don't think this is going to end well. Unless, of course, you're still caught in one of these godforsaken cults. And you're like, but I got to support Trump because he's got some 3D, 4D chess thing to make all well. Or if only Kamala Harris would win, we'd all be at brunch. You can be, if you're still there, you're probably going to end up shot on the street or something by the ICE or something. Now, where we are spiraling downward to is something else that I said. Again, you can go back to some of my old videos when people would, in interviews, when people would ask me and say, hey, Garland, do you think we're going to have a civil war? And I said, and my position always was, Not in the traditional sense. You know, people always look for patterns, for everything to repeat itself exactly as it happened before, but that's not the way history works. Things repeat themselves, but they have different twists, plot twists. They express themselves in a different way. For instance, the US empire and the deterioration of the political class in the West expressed itself as a demented Joe Biden, a Hillary Clinton, a Donald Trump. These are all, you know, it's hope and change. It's build back better. You know, it's MAGA. It expresses itself in various ways, but in reality, it's all the same thing. You know, it is the deterioration of this empire. Now, when asked for years, are we going to have a civil war? I would say not in the traditional sense. I don't believe that Americans are going to be like literally like putting on a blue or gray uniform to go to the battles of Gettysburg, right? That the Americans will be marching against each other, that there'll be troops meeting at the Mississippi or some kind of crap like that. No, not in the traditional way. I've always said this. I think it'll look more like an insurrection than it will a civil war. In other words, as opposed to if and when the violence expands, which seems to be more of a win now, as it is already expanding, I think what we're, unless it's avoided, which don't look all that likely, I think what we're looking at is something that looks more like an insurrection where people are shooting at government officials, where there's violence against government officials, violence against the political class. You know, the political class, my God, the Democrats and the Republicans. Let me say this. I saw people on the street, and when they would ask them, they would say, well, the Democrats aren't going to do anything like this. I think some of the so-called, you know, woke Democrats, whatever you want to call them, even some of them have figured out, even some of the K-Hive, you know, people, even some of the I'm with her people, even some of these poor bastards have figured out that the Democrats just ain't going to bail them out. Some of them, you know, Zionism, if nothing else, woke them up. You know, some of them were like, hey, oh, they kidnapped Maduro. That's not right. And they're like, Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the Democrats, and Bernie, he's a dictator, but maybe we should or shouldn't have. But he's a dictator, you know. And I'm like, yeah, Democrats will bail you out. You still believe in that one? So I think I saw a video of some guy. They were marching in New York, right? And he was a traditional black guy, traditional Democrat, right? But he was saying, we have to understand that the Democrats want to bail us out. And I thought, now we might be able to use the word woke for you, buddy. Now you might be waking up. Now when you realize that your party ain't your party, that you don't work for them, that you are fuel for the machine, then maybe you'll start to get it. That a national, I've heard people say something about a national strike or something like that. That those kinds of things are your only hope. You know, if someone says, I find both sides of this paradigm equally repugnant, because it's really, you know what it's like? I'm glad he said that. I'm glad Ray said that, right? Where is he? Right here. I'm glad he said that for this reason. Because it's like the Democrats and the Republicans, right? They give you the appearance of two sides. They give you the appearance of a fight, a battle between two opposing forces, right? But really, it's not a battle between two opposing forces. Really, it is a single force trying to present itself as two opposing forces to give you a side to pick. It is, you might have heard this for the Bonapartism, so the French political perspective from the 1800s. And anyway, it works like this. I'm a billionaire. For instance, let me give you an example. The Koch brothers are billionaires. Bill Gates is a billionaire. And they got problems and they're fighting. but there's only two of them. So there's not enough, there's only two or three of them. They can't fight. So what the Koch brothers have to do is enlist an army of people in the working class. And then what Bill Gates has to do is enlist an army of people in the working class. So the ruling elite, these factions of the ruling elite that fight each other, they must enlist a gigantic army of people on their side, and the other one, this has nothing to do with you. It's not your fight. It's not going to benefit you. You are nothing but cannon fodder. It is the equivalent of a proxy war. It is the United States going to Ukraine, overthrowing the government and setting the Ukrainians up so those poor bastards will be thrown into the meat grinder against the Russians. It's the United States creating a proxy war, getting this country to fight against that, going into Taiwan. We must help Taiwan, arm Taiwan to the teeth so the Chinese, they can harass the Chinese, but meanwhile, they get the hell beat out of them. That's all it is. It is the equivalent of a proxy war. A bunch of billionaires getting a bunch of working class people who the billionaires are both screwing on each other's side, building up two fake sides so they can clash and fight each other. And the billionaires can sit back looking at their ivory tower. Woo, man, those poor bastards are getting slaughtered, ain't they? Yeah. Oh, well. And then when the fight's over, they both walk away with the money. That's the game. So if you're still into this, of the belief, if you truly believe that the government is in Minnesota to deal with illegal immigration, if you truly believe that January 6th was a threat to our democracy, then you have to believe that we have a democracy. And that would mean you still believe that there's one party. See, if you think there's a democracy, that means you think that the people elect somebody and that person represents us. Democracy, Republican, however you want to put it. Most people say it's a democracy, not a republic, and they don't even know the difference. And there is a significant difference, but we don't have time to get into that. My point being, it's kind of significant difference, but it's not even real in our circle, in the context of U.S. politics. Here's my point. What we have to wake up to the realization is that, number one, we don't have a team that represents us. I'm sorry if you're a conservative person. I don't want to hurt your feelings. The Republicans don't in any way represent you. They represent Zionism. They represent billionaire, international, global financial capital, speculative capital, right? They represent that. And oh, by the way, I don't have to do something different for the Democrats. That's who they represent. That this is all the same game. Wait, I mean, I've said this on other videos, but some people might not have heard this. Mark Carney is the Prime Minister of Canada. He worked for Goldman Sachs Bank, and he was the CEO of the Bank of England. Emmanuel Macron is the Prime Minister of France. He worked for Goldman Sachs Bank, and then he worked for Rothschild Bank. Friedrich Merz is the Chancellor of Germany. Before that, he worked for a law firm that specialized in banking, acquisitions, and mergers. That's global financial capital. And then he became the CEO of BlackRock. That's speculative global financial capital. Do you see a common theme here? Who's dragging Donald Trump's both foreign policy and economic policy around? Scott Bessent, right? If I'm not Scott Bessent, Soros. Let me find it. Scott Bessent worked at Soros Fund Management, where he became known for his significant trades, including the famous shorting of the British pound during the 1992 Black Wednesday crisis. He later founded his own hedge fund, Key Square Group, with initial backing from George Soros. That's right. That's right. So, what is Soros? Global speculative financial capital. He is the BlackRocks. He is the Rothschild banks. They're all the same guy, including Trump. And let me tell you, Trump's foreign policy, there we go. Scott Bessent began his career at Soros Fund Management in 1991. He quickly rose to become the head of the London office, London, the city of London. He is direct a puppet for the British Empire. Bessent played a key role in the firm's famous trade during Black Wednesday in 1992, which earned over $1 billion by shorting the British pound. He served as chief investment officer at SFM, Soros Fund Management. Let's see. He founded Key Square Group. Listen to this. Bessent's political contribution shifted from, listen to this, supporting Democrat candidates to backing Republican candidates after 2015. In 2024, he was nominated by President Trump to be the 79th Secretary of the Treasury, a position he assumed on January 28, 2025, right? So, Scott Bessent, Trump's money guy, Trump's foreign policy guy, Scott Bessent worked for George Soros. He started Soros Fund Management. He started his own speculative capital organization with money from George Soros. Oh, by the way, up until 2015, he was pumping all of his money into the Democrats. One last thing. He is noted for being the first openly gay person to hold this position in U.S. history. So here's my point. You're being had. You're being had. You're being had that Scott Bessent and that Donald Trump is some kind of a different guy, that he's fighting for you, that he's opposed to the woke Democrats, that, oh, he's going to stand it. Trust me when I tell you this. These ICE guys are not in the streets to stop illegal immigration. Nothing they're telling you is true. Nothing. Zero. Learn to understand that you're being lied to. That there's two sides. Oh, really? There's two sides. So, Trump's right-hand man is a Soros guy who got all of his money from Soros, who was a Democrat up until 2015, and you think that Trump came in to do something different? How's that working out? How's it working out? Donald Trump just sent 3 people to negotiate, supposedly negotiate with the Russians. Kushner, Jewish Zionist, Witkoff, Jewish Zionist, and Greenbaum, Jewish Zionist. He sent, now this is the United States, where, let's be honest about this, somewhere between 1% and 2% of the people here are Jewish. And let me add this, not all of them are Zionists. But in the Trump administration, he sends 3 guys to negotiate on behalf of you, and all of them are Zionists. First of all, I don't care if they're Jewish, as long as they're not Zionists. But they didn't go because they were Jewish. They went because they were Zionists. And you are on board the Zionist pirate ship. You are on board the Zionist Titanic. And your job, sorry, there ain't no room in the lifeboats for you. They're slamming it in the icebergs, and there is no room in the icebergs for you in the boats. Not enough spaces in the lifeboats for you. You get thrown over the side. I mean, it's time for people to wake up and learn that they're being ruled over by people. There's nothing for you. If you're supporting, if you still think they're there for the good of the order, why are they there? Think about this. If you believe that you have to support ICE in Minnesota, because I'm gonna dig down to this to show you how brainwashed you are if you believe this. If you believe that ICE is in Minnesota or anywhere else to deal with illegal immigration, then let's ask why. Let's ask why. You also have to believe that they're trying to stop illegal immigration to save your jobs, to help you. What you have to believe, if you believe that they're there to deal with immigration, you also have to believe that they're doing it, that they have your best interest in mind. Well, why are they trying to stop immigration, Garland? Oh, that's easy, because they want to look out for American jobs, and they want to make sure that the value of your labor, that you're paid a reasonable, so they're going to get rid of these darn immigrants so that you'll be treated fairly and you'll get good jobs. You got to believe that. You got to really believe that the Soros that Biden was the Soros government, and now Trump's the Soros government, and you got to believe that the billionaire globalist speculative financial capital machine wants the average schlump like you and me to get a better job and get paid better. Guess who's paying us? Them. So if we get paid better, it comes out of their pocket. You got to be a fool to believe that. If to still believe that they're there to do something, anything. Let's not even bring illegal immigration. That they're there to do anything to improve your circumstances, to improve your pay, to improve your life, to bring down the prices of groceries or gas or anything else. You got to be out of your mind. Even if you feel that illegal immigration is a problem, fair enough. I'm not going to say it is or it's not. I'm not taking a position on this because that's not even what the discussion is about. Even if you believe that illegal immigration is a problem, let's just say I'm Garland. This is Garland now. And I say, I think illegal immigration is a problem. This is an intellectual exercise. Well, Garland, what do you think? You think the government's going to do something to help us? No, they're not. They're only going to make it worse because the billionaires want illegal immigrants so they can pay them next to nothing. Oh, by the way, so they can deliberately drive your wages down. So, no, I don't believe that the government, I'm sorry, you will forgive me if I don't believe the government. You'll forgive me if I say to you, the government's lying to you. But no, I'm sorry, I can't buy that foundational belief that the government wants to do the right thing and that they're just trying to address illegal immigration so they can raise their wages and they can lower inflation and they can make it all better for the working man. People are so gullible. They start war after war. Trump just literally said he's got Soros' right-hand man running his fiscal policy. Think about that. And Biden had Soros's left-hand man. See, think about it. Biden has Soros's left-hand man running his policy. Trump has his right-hand man running his policy. But somehow you think that these are somehow going to be different policies. I have a feeling that they ain't. So if you think somehow, and let me ask you this. You think if you got rid of Trump, things would turn around? You already got rid of Biden, and you're like, Biden's horrible. Let's get rid of Biden. You got rid of Biden. How things do? Did they improve? So do you think it's about a person? We need to get rid of Trump. Yeah, because, everything has just come right around if we got rid of Trump. J.D. Vance, he's not owned by Palantir. I'm sure he'd do the right things. Well, how about if he goes? And then who do we get? The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson? I think Mike Johnson was just straight up. No. He'd have the same. One would have a Soros's left-hand man, and the other would have Soros's right-hand man. And you would get what you get. And BlackRock would be there, and Goldman Sachs, and Citibank, and all of that, and some iteration of Epstein. And you know what? People are like, oh, well, I think Trump is they've got something on from Epstein. They don't need anything on him from Epstein. Perhaps you don't understand. Let me tell you this. There's football games today. And let's say a guy plays for the Chicago Bears. He's paid by the Chicago Bears. He has on a Chicago Bears uniform. Do the Bears need to manipulate him? Do they need to bribe him to get him to, run with the football? That's what they pay him for. He's on their team. Trump is on their team. He is a member of that team. He is a well-paid member of the team. You don't have to bribe a member of your team to do something that would help your team win. If you think that Trump is being bribed or needs to be bribed, then you obviously think that he ain't on their team and he has some other plan. Yes, they're bribing Trump to do this. Why? Because otherwise he wouldn't do it. Trump doesn't want to do this. He's absolutely in opposition to it. So they got to bribe him with pictures. No, my friend, you're naive. You've been had. You think Trump's on your team and somehow they're bribing him. No. Did the New England Patriots, did they have to bribe Tom Brady when he was playing for the Patriots? No, they paid him well. He got a check every week or so for like $1 million or something from the Patriots. They didn't have to bribe him. It wasn't even a bribe. He was on their team and they paid a guy on their team. He was their quarterback. Trump's on their team. He ain't on yours. You have been had. You got to come down off of that belief that Trump is somehow on your team and must be bribed to do something that otherwise he wouldn't do anything that would hurt the working class. Certainly not. He's one of us. So here's my point. It is inevitable to me. It is inevitable that as the government gets further away from the illusion, they get further from the illusion of democracy, illusion that this is a republic. That's an illusion. That's an illusion. As they get further from that illusion, as they get to see, at first it's like, yes, we're working for you guys. And then it gets to the point like, hey, don't push back or we'll kill you. Now, let me ask you this. Have we had a Republican who was pushing back against the government shot? Ashley Babbitt. Have we had Democrats or lefties or whatever? They're not real Democrats who were pushing back against the government shot. Just two of them. They're getting shot on both sides. And there ain't really two sides. There's various sides with the people. There ain't various sides with the government. They create the sides for you to be on. See, that's the difference. You got to understand something. They create a place for you to be. They create the concept of the Democratic Party. They create a room, and then you voluntarily walk into that room, which is more like a slaughterhouse. Then the Republican Party creates a room for you to be in, and they put up signs that say, "Make America Great Again," right this way. And you walk in the room, and the Democrats create a room, and they put up a sign, "Hey, we stand with the LGBT community," right this way, and into the room you go. And you feel good because you're taking the moral position, and you walk into that room. It's a slaughterhouse. They turn it on the gas. It ain't showers, my friend. So my point being, get the hell out of the room. Don't walk in anymore. Let's all stand around in the hallway and say we ain't voluntarily going in the room. We will not comply. Why do we do that instead of buying into this crap that we got to now? I'm finally starting to hear some Democrats saying, perhaps we've been had. Remember the whole, what was his name, George Floyd thing? The cops killed a guy. I looked at the video. I'm a former cop. It literally, he had his knee on the guy's neck. And the guy was like, "You're killing me, man." And then the guy died. And then like a lot of conservatives said, "Well, I don't think he killed the guy. I think the guy died of a drug overdose or something." I'm like, "I don't know." I'm looking at it, and the guy's saying, "You're killing me," and he died. I think that's pretty strong evidence right now. But what happens at that point? If his name had been Ashley Babbitt, I guess the conservatives would have been like, "Yeah, that's wrong." But here's my point. It was the team things. So the Democrats marched all over the place. And I'm like, yeah, boy, nothing's going to happen because of this. So they marched all over the place from one end of the country to the other. There's a whole lot more to that with COVID that I could. But bottom line was that all happened. And I just knew, you poor bastards. You think the Democrats are going to do something about that? You know what the Democrats did? They kneeled with a kente cloth or something on. When I looked and I saw the leaders of Citibank and like these big banks, the Wall Street banks, they were like kneeling. And I'm like, oh, you poor bastard, you've been had. That's what you're going to get. That's what I tried to tell Black people. That's what I tried to tell Democrats and minorities. The only thing you're going to ever get from the Democrats are rhetoric. You're going to get rhetoric for them, strongly worded tweets. You'll always get lots of strongly worded. It'll say things like this: "Why we should all have health care." Oh, you're going to give us health care? Well, hell no, but we should all have it. And I just issued a strongly worded tweet. That's all you're ever going to get from them is a strongly worded tweet. Not one piece of legislation passed, nothing I knew. So you marched all over creation from one side of this country to the other. You got nothing. You're never going to get anything from them because they don't work for you. Same with the Republicans. What did you do? You wore red hats, you maggot all over the place. You came out for Trump. People voted for Trump who never. Why? Because we want peace. And Trump was like, "I'm the peace president." They're like, "Hey, we're good with the peace president. America first." All righty, here's my flag. America first. Trump got in. Screw America. I'm here for Zionism. And they're like, "Hey, what about America first? I can't talk to you right now. I got to get these 3 Zionists to go represent America." And they're like, "Well, perhaps can't you be something other than Zionist?" Nope. The Trump administration is Zionism on steroids. He doesn't even care. Trump is simple as this: I won. I played the America First card so that you would vote for me, and you dumb bastard, you voted for me. Thank you. Appreciate it. But I already got the candy. What do I need the cow for now? I already got the milk. I milked the cow. In November, I got the job. Thanks, guys. Now go on about your business. I got to move on with Zionism. These are the people I work for, not you. I got to move on with Scott Bessent and the Soros people, not you. That ain't the way it works. Your job is to vote for me. Don't worry. In 4 years, I got old Peter Thiel's Palantir boy here. In 4 years, he'll be out forward. Look, think about this. You got Erica Kirk and all of these people coming out already saying, yes, we support J.D. Vance. In 4 years, you got to vote for J.D. Vance. Trump ain't even out of office yet, and they're already handing you the next Zionist Palantir puppet. But they're really standing up for, they're really standing up on behalf of you, my friends. Keep that in mind. Always support your government. They don't lie to you about anything, and they're here to make sure that your life is better. By the way, the other issue at hand is, as we are distracted in Minnesota, there's all these planes, trains, and automobiles sailing towards Iran. Will these lunatics attack Iran? They may just say, well, screw it. Everything's falling apart anyway. Let's just start throwing things at Iran. And I have a bad feeling about this one. You know what it is? It's like the guy that goes into bars and starts fights. Sooner or later, dude, you're going to start a fight with the wrong guy. The time is coming when you're going to start a fight with the wrong guy. And by the way, you're sending a bunch of, I've said this about bases. There was a time when the U.S. government would surround your country with bases, and that was offensive, and that was threatening. Now, you know what they did? Now, because the world is dominated by surface-to-surface missiles, now you surround them with bases, you've given them a lot of targets, a whole lot of targets. And unfortunately for those targets, they're going to get hit. And the Iranians have said, look, if you start throwing stuff at us, we're going to throw a hell of a lot of stuff at you in a hurry. And, you know, we don't know. We don't know. There's apparently a lot of Russian and Chinese stuff. You know, the Iranians learned, you know, the last time when they kicked the crap out of Israel in 12 days, what happened? The Chinese said this about the Iranians. They have a strong sword, but a weak shield. In other words, their air defense system leaves something to be desired. They have one, but their offensive weapon system is pretty good, pretty damn good. I mean, they just smacked the hell out of, and they've been out of Israel. So my point is, I think Iran knows if you attack me, you know, if you listen to my show, I always say this. So what do you say in self-defense when somebody attacks you? Punch your way out of it, right? If somebody attacks you, what do? You attack back immediately. When you take a punch, you get yourself together as quickly as you can. You start throwing punches, kicks, anything you can, throwing stuff at them, hitting with anything. You want to react to an offensive attack. Your reaction has to be an offensive attack because you've got to throw the attacker back off their heel, back on their heels. The idea in war, right? It's a counterattack. You always want to do that. Okay, so you got to counterattack. I think the Iranians are planning a massive counterattack. Think about this. I remember watching this one of these Battlestar Galacticas or one of these Star Treks or one of these, right? So what they did was they were going to go out and attack whoever it was, right? And they had all of their ships. And they said, okay, our ships are going to leave and they're going to go out and they attack the enemy's fleet. So the enemy put like a fake fleet out there. So all of their fighters took off and they're going out to attack the fleet. When they're going out to attack the fleet, guess what the problem was? The enemy was attacking them. The enemy wanted them to get their fighters away from the main ships so that the main ships would be naked and they could attack them without their fighters, right? Here's my point. Number one, you're putting all of these ships and bases in play. Right now, you're bringing in, Trump said, we're bringing in an armada. That's one way to look at it. Here's another way to bring in it. You're bringing in some big damn targets. So you come in, we're going to let them sons of bitches have it this time. You got your fight, you got your ships and all that, right? Your planes take off by the hundreds. They're swarming like bees. Off they go. Now your planes are coming in to attack Iran. What does Iran do? It fires anti-ship missiles and it attacks your bases. When you get your planes in the air, that's the perfect time to counterattack all the bases. Nothing's there. Nothing's there. So these, one of the things you can use airplanes for is anti-ship. Airplanes can, fire anti-ship missiles and anti-missile missiles, right? When they come in to attack you is when you hit. Won't you go back and hit and don't you can yes you're going to fight them, but they're away from the bases. The bases are naked. They're away from the carriers. The carriers are naked. That's when you let them have. That's when you counterattack. So the issue is this. Trump just said we're sending an armada. What happens if that armada gets sunk? You are sending. What happens if you go in there and you say, okay, now I'm going to let them have it? But let's just say you had underestimated their missile strength. Now, has that happened before? Oh, yeah. When you fought Israel, you underestimated their strength with missiles and drones and things of that nature. So they were able to overwhelm Israel's air defense with missiles and drones and high-speed missiles and different kinds of missiles and you name it. And they used these missiles. They had missiles that came in and then fired a cluster of missiles down, right? They fired multiple warheads, all this kind of stuff, right? What the hell happens if you go in like, okay, now we're going to hit them? And as I said, if I were in charge of Iran, I would say the first thing I'm going to hit is all those American bases. I'm going to hit your airfields and your ports so the planes can take off. But when they go back, they're going to have a pile of black rubble to land at. They're going to be landing in the dark, and good luck landing on an aircraft that's on fire going to the bottom. Because when you come after me, I'm going after the foundational things that you need to fight a war. What happens if you attack Iran and you get smacked in the nose the first day? That is the potential. And what then? What are you going to fire nuclear weapons? And then that's pretty much it for everything. That's pretty much it for at that point. It'll never be the same world. At that point, the price of gas will go through the roof. The economies will crash. I mean, at that point, you can forget it. The world you live in, the things that you once had, the way you once lived, will come to a screeching halt. So my point being, and that they're rolling the dice with everything. And if you think about this, if they attack Iran, they're rolling the dice with the entire empire. They're rolling the dice with the entire economy. They're rolling the dice with everything that makes your life worth living. And you really think that they're in Minnesota, that ICE is out there trying to do things to make your life better when we're rolling the dice with everything? You got to be out of your freaking mind. Anyway, thanks a lot. Let me look, and I'm going to see if we got some super chats. I saw some, and we will answer the super chats. Let's go. Chili Pepper says, DJT, ICE, Noam, Bovino, Amit Patel, and Bondi are revealing an indentured evil that is a threat to humanity at its core, as a core. You are 100% right. You are right. It was like, people were like, could anybody be more evil than Tony Blinken? At least as evil. But you got the same guy. Let's go here. So sad way societies are going. Hopefully your messages and others of more understanding between people will encourage people to seek harmony. I hope so too. I don't know. There are some people that you can't help, but you got to try to do the best you can. Let's go here. Remember, both sides are funded by the same rich people. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Let's keep going. All right. I believe Iran has proven escalator dominance in the Persian Gulf. I think so too. Thanks a lot, everybody. I certainly appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy schedule. Let me just to spend a few moments with me. Make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget, everybody, whether it's Patreon or PayPal, buy me a coffee, whatever, any way that you can help. Buy me a coffee is an easy one to use. And additionally, if you want to, you can do just like the Patreon with the buy me a coffee, where you make it monthly, but you don't have to. It can be one time. And of course, my PO box for those of us who still use snail mail. Some people that can send me a donation, other people that can't, just send a letter of support. That's always appreciated. A card, a thank you, hey, love you, Garland, I'm down with everything you're doing. And sometimes people complain, I don't care, or make recommendations. But I do have a snail mail PO box, so you can use that for whatever you choose. Hey, everybody, have a wonderful day. Thanks. I'm out. Oh, I forgot. Make sure you share this on all your social media platforms. Goodbye.